Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this, the third week and fourth talk in this series of Edit Online webinars, which has been kindly sponsored by Clever, a market-leading edtech company who specialize in identity management, multi-factor authentication, and the digital classroom. Today, we're very excited to have someone who many of you know, Tom Newton from Smoothwall, here to speak to you with his talk, Proof of Work, Tom's Insights from the Frontlines of Digital Safety. As always, there will be a Q&A at the end of this session. And if any of you want to ask any questions, then please feel free to use the chat box to post them up, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Welcome, Tom, and thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
No problem. Sorry, you go.
Absolutely miss being an in-person edit, but yes, thanks to all the geopolitical weirdness, we've got a lovely virtual one. But I look forward to the next time we can all be in person together.
Yes, hopefully later in the year. We're working on this, so we'll keep all the members posted. But I'll hand the floor.
I look forward to it, but I don't mean I want to have to do another presentation later in the year. Everyone's question, one's enough.
Okay, then, Tom, I'll hand it all over to you now.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for coming to listen to me. I really do appreciate it. I want to start with a little agreement between us all, if we could. The agreement is I don't want any of you going and telling the marketing department on me, because what I'm going to do today is I'm not going to talk about Smoothwall's products. If I mention them, it will be in passing. I'm not going to try and sell you anything. So I'm sorry to the marketing department. I'm sorry everybody else. We're just going to have a chat and a bit of fun, because that is what the Edit conference is all about, really, isn't it? It's perhaps learning something new, talking to one another, and yeah, trying to keep ourselves entertained along the way. So hopefully this will do that. So what are we talking about today? Well, some of you will notice I have a new title on the slide. So my current title is apparently VP of External Affairs and Innovation. And when those lovely marketing folks who helped me put together the slides, that's why there's like colour on them. In fact, let's be honest, that's why the slides at all. The chance of me putting together some slides without any provocation is exceedingly slim. So it was with their help that I do that. And what they asked was, what does VP External Affairs actually do? What are you doing with your life these days? When you used to work in product and used to be guiding the Smoothwall product teams into building the right stuff, we knew what you did, but what are you up to these days? So that's a little bit of what we're going to cover today. What have I been up to? What have I been doing? Who have I been talking to? And where have I been finding things out? So we'll start with what is Smoothwall. You probably all know this, but we'll cover anyway, just for fun. And who is this guy and what does he even do? So Smoothwall is part of Coria, which is a global company. We protect young people online across the world. Surprising number of different countries. So over 33,000 schools across the two brands, which are Smoothwall and Linewise, that currently work in UK and US and rest of world, respectively. 9 million parents through the Custodio brand. That's the office out of Barcelona in Spain. You can see there. That's a piece of software that allows parents to monitor and keep their children safe online. If any of you are interested in using the Custodio software, drop me a line, check out the website. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. And that's 38% of UK schools are a Smoothwall customer in some way, and then 19% of districts in the US with Linewise. So quite, I've been here quite a while. I've been here knocking on for 20 years in bits and more, in fact. And the growth of this company is incredible. But we're going through another phase of our evolution now, and some of you who follow us closely might see that we're about to be subject to everything going as planned. Next month, become part of Aura, which is a company that does protection for adults online as well. So strengthening our protection there, I would urge you to go and look up Aura, see what they do, see what you think about them. And again, happy to take any questions on that subject, either online or off. So yeah, again, marketing made these slides, so you're going to get some numbers. I shan't read them all out because it's just no fun at all. But the salient number there is that 46-second number. Every 46 seconds, our monitoring solution finds a child in suspected serious risk in their online lives, which is, I think, quite incredible. One of the things that gets us all moving on a morning is thinking about the number of times we can intervene and help keep young people safe. And, you know, every 46 seconds, a testament to our team and their hard work in the background. So who am I? So I'm Tom Newton, so I'm VP for External Affairs. What do I do apart from trying to get to 6,000 posts on EduGeek? Which, as you can see, I've been a member since September 16, 2006. There was a vague accusation whilst we were in the sort of backstage area with Chris and Sean that the picture at the start of this slideshow may have been taken around September 2006. Look at that. Apparently, I look very young there. So anyway, I was accused of using old photographs, probably quite fairly. But you can all see the wrinkly old devil that I am now. Yeah. So what do I do apart from my prodigious posting on EduGeek? Well, external affairs means I go to bat for you guys in organisations that are external to Qoria. So apart from our customers, we have other external organisations we deal with. 4 of the main ones, things here that I do is working with standards bodies. So, for example, the International Telecoms Union, or ITU, and the IETF. I'm attending meetings there to try and push forward standards, particularly at the moment around child online protection and parental controls, so those can interoperate with one another. In raising awareness, so raising awareness of the challenges schools face in filtering and monitoring with folks like the DFE, with the government, with other charitable organisations around the place, and helping people like the UK Safer Internet Centre make the voice of education heard around the government, so the challenges that we face in keeping children safe in education are listened to and understood, and ensuring that things like the legislation have our best interests at heart. And some of that having our best interest at heart involves challenging big tech. So we don't want the Apples, the Microsofts, the Facebooks of this world to have it all their own way. As you've seen before, Qoria is now a reasonably sized company, but we are naught but a pimple compared with some of the big tech folks, and yet we will stand against them where we can, where we think they're making mistakes, where we think they're making things less safe. So one of the examples has been the push for encrypted client hello, which has been really useful for consumer privacy in places, but is actually makes things quite challenging when it comes to security and safety in certain other aspects. So we found ourselves alongside some fairly large European banks and Vodafone and little old us saying, actually, this isn't ideal. This is not the perfect way that we could have moved forward. And all of that is about raising the bar for child safety online. So many different things in many different places, but really with one aim. And over the past 12 months, I've met some interesting people, spoken about some fairly interesting things, and I wanted to pick out a couple of them in these slides. Some of them probably more relevant to our day-to-day practice than others, but all of them I hope you'll find vaguely interesting. As I said, Q&A at the end. I absolutely will welcome questions on subjects that aren't in the slides, be that around Smoothwall, the product, Courier, the company, anything, feel free. I can't promise to answer them all. I can't promise to know the answers to all of them, but I'll do what I can. So on the agenda is the new filtering updates from the DFE. So from coming out from our work with the DFE, what has been changed there? Then what have we been doing with UK Safer Internet Centre? How they changed testfiltering.com? What does that mean for everybody? Then moving on to talk a little bit about the IWF, the Internet Watch Foundation, and their annual report. So one of the things I've been able to do this year as part of my new role is become a trustee of the IWF and help support their work, which is lovely to see Courier giving back through donation of my time to a charity there. Then we'll talk a little bit about Underminr, which, yes, is spelt a little bit weirdly, largely because the people behind it did not want a lawsuit from Disney, who apparently have a character called Underminr. Don't know. Look it up. Which is a flaw in. It's not a flaw in DNS. It's a flaw in the way DNS can't be used entirely cohesively for security anymore because of IPv4 exhaustion. So we'll look at that, and then what I described to the marketing folks is a super secret bonus slide because I had to go and ask our friends at Google if I could include it, and they said yes. So we'll get to that at that point. So first up, Department for Education. They have made some new clarifications. Now, this is slightly aggravating because these clarifications are not yet published anywhere. They've published the clarifications out to some web filter vendors, to the UK Safer Internet Centre. We have this sort of official email with the clarifications. I suspect they'll be published with Keeping Children Safe in Education, which I am told we'll see a draft of in June. He says, looking at his watch, discovering it is already June. And I was told that fairly recently, despite recent ministerial upheavals, that we will still get a KICSI draft, or what's going to happen. Well, what's going to be implemented in September. We'll see the early results in June. But what we do know is this real-time filtering phrase, which has been a point of contention with people not really understanding what it means. The DFE have clarified what they think it means. So real-time filtering is making an immediate block or allow decision based on known URL categories. So that means like doing your filtering at the time of request and understanding from that request that's a URL we don't want to go to, and making that decision straight away based on a rapidly updated list of URLs. But filtering real-time content or real-time content filtering is analyzing the content of a page itself as it is displayed, including dynamic, personalized, user-generated and AI-generated content that cannot be reliably pre-categorized. So they're really making sure that we understand this difference between content that can be pre-categorized, because we can look at a URL, read that content and say that URL is going to contain similar content today, tomorrow and the next day, so we can put it in the list and call that done, versus content that is dynamic, which might be, say, AI generated content because you've gone on Gemini and said write me a recipe for an explosive or something like that, which Gemini hopefully wouldn't give you, but who knows, you could trick these things fairly easily. That content would be absolutely dynamic to that user session, unable to determine what it is from the URL. Given the same URL, it would be impossible for somebody else to see it. That's the sort of dynamic content that the Department for Education are talking about, or even content that's user generated, of which there are masses. That is very dynamic, can't be done by URL. So real-time content filtering has been defined by the DFE. We thank them for that because making things clearer is fantastic. And another clarification which is published but it's crept out in February this year is filtering systems must have illegal content block lists permanently switched on. There are at present 2 illegal content block lists provided for in keeping children safe. Those are the Internet Watch Foundation's block list, which contains sites known to host child sexual abuse material. And one question I get asked is, why are those sites not taken down? And the answer is, in the main, they are. The IWF does a very, very good job of contacting hosts and taking those sites down. But there are cases where those sites are not taken down for reasons of the jurisdictions they're in, the attitudes of their hosts to the laws in those jurisdictions. And so that list contains the remainder, those things that are still live. By and large, it's not the biggest of lists, but it is incredibly important. So the DFE have said we must not be able to turn off the IWF block list or the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Units list, which is the list of websites provided by the Counter-Terrorism Internet Referral Unit, the UK government's counter-terrorism online force. No one in your school, college or trust should be able to turn these blacklists off, including system administrators. And that last 3 words is really important. They've updated that definition to remind us that even sysadmins should not be able to make an allow in there, which is, it's there's that who looks after the guardians. Mostly there are sysadmins and super administrators or whatever are the guardians of what's right, but we don't want to be able to accidentally turn off those lists. Excuse me, not done a webinar in a while. The old throat isn't great, so quick coffee there to lubricate things. So on to what the UK Safer Internet Centre have been doing. These guys are all about, as the name implies, making the internet a safer place. Fantastic bunch of folks spun out some time ago from Southwest Grid for Learning. And they have, for a long time, you run this site called testfiltering.com. Testfiltering.com is very much, it does what it says on the tin website. It tests your filtering. And among other things, it tests to see whether your filter has the IWF list turned on. You may find that tick appears because many ISPs in this country also implement that list. Someone on EduGeek recently very astutely pointed out that Starlink is one of those ISPs that don't block that list, largely because they're not legally obliged to, because they're not actually a UK ISP. Ditto Terrorism is the counter-terrorism internet referral unit that I spoke about just now. That's making sure that's blocked. And then Adult, that's actually a site on Pornhub that this UK Safer Internet Centre agreed with Pornhub that they could have a benign page, if you would like, on Pornhub that they can check to make sure your filter is blocking adult content. But the new piece that they've added just recently, last couple of months, is this last tick is decryption. Nowhere in Keeping Children Safe in Education, as far as I know, does it say that you must decrypt the traffic of your students' web browsing. However, it is strongly implied because it suggests that we should be able to see search terms. And if you want to see, for example, the search term somebody's typing into Google, you need to decrypt that traffic. Now, when we talk about decryption, we can talk about using HTTPS man in the middle, which I think most of us are probably familiar with, using a certificate to trust a filter product and allow it to decrypt traffic. Or some filter products do that. Some filter products work maybe in the browser where the traffic is already decrypted. So when they say decryption on testfiltering.com, they don't mean there must be some actual decryption going on. They mean you must be able to see more than just the domain. So that's actually the test that happens here, is can you differentiate between 2 URLs on the same domain? This is really, really useful. talking to Will, the CTO at UKSIC, he's got the stats behind this. He keeps promising to release the stats to individual filter vendors. I'm sure he'll get around to it one of these days. He's a very busy man as well. But he's got the stats behind this, and something like 30-40% of UK schools who are running this test, which already puts those schools in the kind of upper band of people who are looking at this and understanding what they need. Only about 30-40% are decrypting traffic. If you're not decrypting traffic, you're not seeing Google search terms, for example. And that's just one example, but it's a good example to show if you're not seeing what kids are searching for online, you really are quite blind to a fairly huge number of threats. So decryption is super important. They've put that little tick box in there. I would strongly suggest that if you don't already, you make using testfilter.com a part of your monthly routine. It's also if you get 4 green ticks today, you might not get 4 green ticks this time next month because somebody might change something, or there might have been a mistake made, or whatever happens, you might change filter vendors, it might not be correctly configured anymore. So really important, don't just test once, test a lot, test from student flavored devices. Then these additional features, the capability of blocking offensive language, and importantly, that real-time content filter. So again, tracking back to what the DFE were talking about. Are you doing real-time content filtering? This is precisely that. That will be marked as detected there by serving 2 different pages, one with some very benign content on it, one with some pornographic content, which, by the way, is never seen. So don't worry about running the test. Never actually seen. It's just served in the background to prove that you can block it or not. These are on there in blue rather than in green. They're like an on-off rather than a tick cross, because of course there is no actual requirement for real-time content filter. There is only the requirement that you understand the difference between real-time content filter and regular real-time filtering, and that you understand what that difference means from a safeguarding perspective. So of course, part of understanding that difference is understanding whether you're using it or not. So really useful to keep an eye on that. Again, if you don't have the decryption tick, you won't have the real-time content filter because it's impossible to filter content if you can't see it. Otherwise, you're just stuck with the good old URLs. So again, any questions on the subject of testfiltering.com, happy to answer those. Speaking of AI, which is one of the reasons that definitions of real-time content filtering have been bandied around and firmed up this year, it's because of the huge uptick in AI-generated content. The folks at the UK Safer Internet Centre have done a report on AI-generated content. The surprising one for me there is that 90% of children and young people of 8 to 17 have used AI in some form. I would suggest that is more like 100%, partly because most people who think of AI think of ChatGPT or something similar, where you type a question or a prompt and something comes back. But in actual fact, there's little bits of AI baked in everywhere, not just in sort of chat response type formats. So I would say probably 100% of children and young people have used AI in some form, and maybe even close to 100% have used it in that sort of chat response format. Isn't it really quite strange that the first real AI boom has not only passed the first time we've really passed the Turing test, but it's very Turing test flavored, because though for those of you who don't know, the Turing test was posited by Alan Turing back in the 50s. That the test was, can an AI in conversation convince the interlocutor that it is human, which I think ChatGPT has convinced many people it's human. But it's kind of interesting to see that the first format that this was delivered in was in a chat that felt very human. I found that quite surprising. Maybe Turing was It's a bit of a Nostradamus, maybe predicted the way that would be delivered. 50% have seen people their age using AI to do their school homework for them. So 50% of kids are snitchers, as it turns out. But no, it's unsurprising that kids are using AI for doing the homework, and gratifying to see that 60% are worried that they might not be able to tell if something is real or made by AI. It's good that folks are thinking about that, and we hope more young people are educating themselves in that regard, because it is becoming increasingly hard. And 60% of young people are worried about someone using AI to make inappropriate pictures of them. We know the government are moving to help prevent this, particularly by the nudifying app ban, which is something that is replicated worldwide. There are many jurisdictions have taken up bans on nudifier apps. Something that I've been tangentially involved in my work, talking to government and through folks like the IWF. Speaking of which, so say I'm a trustee of the Internet Watch Foundation. The Internet Watch Foundation was formed a couple of decades ago to help self-police the ISPs of the internet to ensure child sexual abuse material was not hosted on UK ISPs. Since then, their aim and mission has broadened much further than ISPs. They're part of a group of charities worldwide who attempt to keep the scourge of child sexual abuse material off the internet, to disrupt is the word that they use, to disrupt the potential cases of child sexual abuse, to prevent the perpetrators spreading anything that they've created, to prevent new images being created, and to, where possible, delete those images, remove those images, and stop those images being shared so young people are not re-victimized. And they have a team of people in an office in Cambridge assessing reports showing these awful images and videos. And again, every 101 seconds they assess a new report, which is incredible work that they do. These images are then hashed to a hash that's non-reversible back to the image, so we can recognize those images in future. But what they've seen this year, and they've just released what I think is slightly oddly named Data and Insights Report 2025. It's released in 2026. It was released a month or so ago, but it's from data in 2025, so that's why it's called the 2025 report. And of course, the big news in this year's report is AI-generated child sexual abuse imageries up 260-fold on 2024. 97% of those depicting girls. They are still overwhelmingly the target of abusers, but sextortion has increased as well, and sextortion disproportionately hits boys aged 14 to 17. So these are things to ensure that talk to not only the young people in schools about, but also talk to your own families and children. This is not something that happens to other people. There were some incredibly courageous women speaking at the launch. A young lady and her mother, and the young lady had been through having her intimate images leaked at age 13, and almost tore her family apart. They had to move houses, move schools, and it suddenly became, one evening in a bedroom sharing some images, ill-advised, became the defining point of that young lady's life. So wherever you have contact with people who might not understand the dangers of this, it really is well worth using your knowledge to help guide folks to be more careful with what they share. I've just gone forward a slide. However, one thing many young people don't know is that it is possible to get your image removed if you have shared an image with someone and they've uploaded it to Facebook, or they've uploaded it to a porn site, or they've uploaded it to Facebook, or many providers actually take a list of those hashes that I spoke of earlier and remove them, or don't let them be uploaded, or in some cases don't let them be shared. In actual fact, the European Union had a derogation allowing for tech companies to do scanning for some of these images prior to end-to-end encryption. So, for example, in chat apps, scanned in the app before it gets encrypted and sent over the wire. That derogation ran out, but some serious players, including Microsoft, have said they're going to continue to do that despite the fact that sort of legal air cover doesn't exist anymore. We're hoping that temporary derogation will come back and be turned a law. That will be really useful. But if someone does share an image and they want it removing, they can go to Childline. Childline will take that image from them. Childline have a carve out in UK law that says a young person is able to share this image with them and not be prosecuted for sharing that image. It's really important. That image is then assessed by the Internet Watch Foundation's team if it's shown to be child sexual abuse material. So if it is an image of a child in a state of undress, for example, it is CSAM, even if it was taken by the child, even if it was taken by them voluntarily at the time. So you would select your age, go into that Childline account, create a report. That image is reported to the IWF, and then that image is hashed. Those hashes are sent to Facebook, OnlyFans, a lot of platforms, and that image then cannot be uploaded to those platforms. So this is a really powerful tool. It would be a lot more powerful if more people knew about it. That's one of the main reasons I'm speaking about it today. If you're wondering, and what if you're an adult and this happens to you, there is stopncii.org. That's stopnonconsensualimageabuse.org. The same service, but for adults. Excuse me. So really important that people know these things are out there, because if we don't know them, we won't use them. The fewer people use them, the fewer platforms will take them on. So let's turn this into a virtuous cycle. Let's make sure people know these tools are out there. So moving on to Underminr, you see here a picture of two strange-looking fellas, particularly that chap on the left. So that's myself and David Redicoop, chap from ADAMnetworks, a Canadian company. I met David a year or so ago in Madrid. It's an IETF standards meeting. They're great places for for meeting sort of random people. David wasn't really in our space or looking at our standards. We just happened to be sitting next to him in the bar. Have a few friends in common, and David's main area of expertise is DNS. And yeah, so here we are sitting in Smoothwall HQ in Leeds, filming his podcast called The Defender's Log. But we'd actually been working together for probably 8 months, in that they'd found on some of their firewall logs in the edge security product they produce some weird looking stuff. So some odd requests to DNS. And David came to me and he said, Tom, if you've got some logs I can look at, so to see if you can replicate this. And I spoke to a couple of our customers and said, can we use your logs? And they said, sure. And we looked in those logs, we found things that looked very, very similar. And what David had found was a method of bypassing DNS filters, which he calls Underminr. Now, Underminr is very like domain fronting. So, domain fronting was a complicated old sausage which allowed you to visit a domain, and inside the domain, change the host header. So your outside SNI looked like a good domain, and your inside SNI was hidden. And certain CDNs, like Google CDN, Cloudflare CDN, would allow you to do this domain fronting, which is effectively routing to a different domain to the one that your SNI traffic advertiser. So your SNI is that outer unencrypted layer on an HTTP packet, which any filter can see, and your internal part of that is the host header. That's always encrypted. It's when those mismatch that allow domain fronting. Now, luckily, content delivery networks basically said, oh, we see that as a bug. Domain fronting is obviously irritating to the defenders, security folks, safety folks, because it makes it really hard to determine where traffic is really going, and it makes it really difficult to do DN blocks based on domain name. And we might want to block VPNs, and yet people are basically able to use domain fronting as a way to hide a VPN traffic in something that looks like it's going to google.com. So domain fronting is kind of old news. That was about a decade ago. We saw domain fronting. It was a problem. We basically had to squash signatures. It wasn't a lot of fun until the CDNs got their act together and said, let's not do this. Underminr is a bit different. Underminr is about hiding your true destination from your DNS server. So what happens with Underminr is, I want to go and visit a hidden domain that's on a content delivery network. Underminr works by the fact that there are many, many websites that share the content delivery network. Let's use Cloudflare as an example. It's not just Cloudflare, but they're a great example. The Smoothwall website is fronted by Cloudflare. So when you visit the Smoothwall website, you are actually going to Cloudflare. They're terminating the SSL connection. They're doing all the interesting bits. However, a great many other websites are also hosted by Cloudflare, and many of them are on the same IP address because IPv4 addresses are rare. And there's absolutely no reason with the ability to send an SNI header and differentiate which site you're going to, for us to not host many, many sites on one IP address. That's absolutely fine. But what this does mean is I can go and look up smoothwall.com, my DNS server, and if my DNS server is a protective DNS, like the NCSC's protective DNS, or if my DNS server is a DNS web filter, I can look that up, go smoothwall.com, and the web filter or protective DNS will go, yeah, check, fine. We'll go there. We'll give you a DNS record for that. Here's the IP address. Then I go to that IP address, but I put in the SNI header evilsite.com. And because evilsite.com and smoothwall.com live on the same IP address or can be served by the same IP address, and this isn't like happenstance or chance, it's basically because these CDNs, any of their IPs will serve any of the sites, as long as you give the right SNI header. So because of that, I can hide my DNS lookups. So my DNS filter is blind to where I'm really going. And I can allow that CDN traffic to go through. The bit that really sucks here is, unlike domain fronting, where content delivery networks could put checks in there now to prevent domain fronting to see if the SNI header and the host header were different and block that traffic, the CDN never sees your DNS lookup. So the CDN can't resolve this. The only place we can resolve this is by making sure that we trust both our DNS server and something looking at SNI traffic. So something looking at SNI traffic would be a filter agent in a browser, or an edge device doing at least SNI inspection. So those are the things that will keep Underminr from being a problem for us. Of course, SNI inspection relies on unencrypted SNI. Unencrypted SNI relies on stripping ECH headers from DNS. That's why you need to trust your DNS server. So now, trusting you can do domain blocking, even just domain blocking, trusting you can do domain blocking, for example, on a BYO network, requires that you have a DNS server you trust and something that's examining SNI that you trust. So really, really interesting piece of research there from the folks at ADAMnetworks. Wonderful folks. Underminr, with spelled like that, .ai is the website, which will show you if a site could be used for Underminr techniques, and also if it actively is being exploited right now. So ADAMnetworks have some data on this, and we were honoured to be listed beside Microsoft and Infoblox and Quad9s, who had also helped out David with his research. So we're really pleased to be able to help with that. And the bonus slide is a bit of an information drop from our friends at Google. So we've managed to make it onto Google's education advisory group for Chromebooks. They've invited a very small handful of vendors in, only 3 filter vendors, and I think 3 or 4 exam software vendors, because they are changing the way Chromebooks work. They understand that Chromebooks are widely used in education. Sensibly, they're getting ahead of this. They're not just going to go and release their new software and then go, ooh, would everyone mind terribly catching up? They're going to get ahead of it and make sure that their new fun stuff works with our existing controls and our existing exam software, and that schools aren't going to have a problem. So they're going to release the Googlebook, which is a new flagship hardware device that will be running an operating system codenamed Aluminium. Aluminium is going to bring Chrome OS into the Android OS. So Google's idea is that you will have an OS that can run anything from a smartwatch all the way up through a phone, tablet, laptop, same OS all the way through, same capabilities. Their driver behind this, their stated driver behind this, is so you can run Gemini everywhere. I suspect they just fancied making Chromebooks better, and that saying it was about AI meant someone would greenlight it in Google, but that's just my opinion. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, that's their idea. They want Gemini running everywhere and running as fully as possible. So this arrives for consumers in autumn of 26, and managed devices are expected in 2027. So we've got a little bit of time to prep for the difference that this will make, because you won't see devices that your school are buying in this calendar year, because they simply won't be available for managed devices. They'll just be consumer devices. We are a launch partner for Aluminium, so we're developing with early access, making sure that we can do what we'll end up doing, I think, is very, very similar to what we do on Windows, is having an agent in the browser and something in the operating system level, so something at Android level, working in concert to do filtering and monitoring. So yeah, ourselves and a few other vendors are working closely with Google to make sure that the transition is absolutely seamless for schools. If you have any concerns about that, we'd be happy to hear them. I'm actually speaking to these folks with the other vendors tomorrow. So if anyone's got any concerns that they think they'd like me to raise, happy to raise those. But there's good dialogue. Really happy to see Google working like that. So yeah, fantastic dialogue and progress being made there. And that brings me to the end of having a voice that works, and onto the Q&A section. So I hope my good friend Mr. Byers has some cues for me to A.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for that. Yeah, I really enjoyed that talk. Sean's going to put up the questions on the screens now, and I'll read them out, and you can provide the answers, please. So we'll start off with Dino Herder. How much of your time is spent mitigating male cow output, both internally and from the DFE, when political expediency drives misguided initiatives?
I mean, it's a fair point. Like, there's no shortage of male cow output in attempts to keep young people safe online. The less charitable among us would say it's because governments and lawmakers have got a hole where their brain ought to be. And while I'm not saying that's never the case, I actually think we can see around the world governments making what we class as the same mistakes. You know, the Australian government were the first to ban social media for under 16s. You know, this has worked precisely as well as everyone expected it to work. Our managing director Tim was on the advisory panel of that. He threw his rattle out the pram fairly early doors and said, I think this is a foregone conclusion, and you're just going to do it anyway. And he wasn't wrong. And then forget the title, but the information commissioner or whoever it was in the government who was responsible for this whole boondoggle, basically has discovered recently that she's the dog that caught the car, got what they wanted, but has said, we got what we wanted, but it didn't work, and so I'm resigning. so I paraphrase. But yeah, so we've seen a lot of governments make the same kind of quote unquote mistake, try the same blunt instruments to solve problems that absolutely aren't blunt instrumentable. And it's tempting to blame the governments or say these people aren't tech savvy, but I think part of the problem lies with the folks building technology. So particularly the huge US tech companies that don't give the governments opportunity to legislate well. The technical open goal isn't there for the government to have a tap in. So the attempt of a shot from 40 yards that flies into the crowd and no one's particularly then surprised. So I think there's a lot of kind of blame, if you want to go to that sort of word. There's a lot of blame to be laid at the doors of the people who built the internet and built the technology for not paying attention to this. And now we're seeing the results of that, which is crap laws, which will inconvenience all of us by putting age verification in places where we don't really want age verification, or putting crummy age verification in places which is easy to bypass. So in answer to your question, the male cow output is prolific, but it's not always the fault of those who are pushing the barrel full of it.
Fair enough. Next question, please, Sean, from BK Gary. Are you finding the proliferation of easy to spin up proxy sites and game sites really annoying and difficult to keep on top of? Do you think Underminr will make this worse?
Annoying? Not really. Well, I say it's not annoying because I actually I have a grudging respect for the young people who do this. When I was a lad and all this was fields, we did daft things to try and get around IT security controls and try and get on stuff we weren't supposed to get on, and we did it. We had a lot of fun and we learned a lot of things. I wouldn't be doing this job if I hadn't. I'd have a grudging respect for the young people who try and get around content filters and build these amazingly well hidden game sites. So game recognizes game. You've got it. You've got to at least give them the quiet nod and go, yeah, well done, kid. So not quite annoying. And if they weren't here, we wouldn't have much difficult job. And if you don't have a difficult job, then you don't need many people to do it, and probably we wouldn't be here. So also thank you for that, kids. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard. And knowing the questioner, and having had a few back and forths together of, Gary is incredible at finding these things. And he's brought a few to us that, have raised an eyebrow. It's an arms race. It always has been. Do I think Underminr will make this harder? I think in certain scenarios, yes. I think particularly in the BYO scenario, yes. Underminr is another tool there. One thing Mr. Reddercoop says is, don't believe just because it's a fairly niche exploit that it won't be used, because people will use AI to build malware, to build proxies, to build whatever. And so once a technique gets into the stream at all, it very quickly becomes mainstream, because AI will amplify the use of these techniques. Even if they're quite complicated, it'll make them easy. which is kind of a shame, because then the grudging respect for these young people goes away if they're just asking AI to do it for them. But I'm still confident that some smart kids out there will try and get around the filters and keep me chuckling for a while yet.
Yes. Do we have any more questions, Sean? Here we go. Smoothwall recently released a video teasing, hey, we're planning to integrate Smoothwall Monitor and Smoothwall Cloud Filter in one dashboard for DSLs. Any plans to integrate with on-prem Smoothwall at all?
Yeah, so actually the integration of Monitor and Filter is in one dashboard, takes that filter log data and displays the DSL when there's a monitor alert. That data could come from either cloud or on-prem. Like, it's displayed in the cloud, but which of our filtering technologies it comes from is irrelevant. So both are integrated.
Okay, and here we go.
Oh, crikey, someone who likes to write.
Yeah, Jim Williams. We're a state boarding school. Boarding students want the same level of access as their friends at evenings and weekends on their own devices. Decryption kills this. Web browser traffic is fine, but mobile apps don't work. Using SSL inspection makes the experience so bad that students resort to VPN services to bypass the filter. In an attempt to keep them on our network, where do we block categories? We've turned off SSL inspection. What's the way forwards?
Now, Jim, you've a tricky one on your hands there, because there isn't a great way forwards. Part of this is when I was speaking earlier about ECH and the way that industry makes changes to make things sort of more secure. I shouldn't air quote more secure. They are more secure, but we get more secure in many places less safe. And this is exacerbated by the fact that, as you've pointed out, when you put a cert on an Android or iOS device, that cert can be obeyed by the web browser, but not necessarily by other apps. Google are talking about making a kind of kite mark for apps that says this app can be made safe. Microsoft were talking about giving us different level of access, but it is all talk at the minute. I'm half hopeful that some of these kind of heavy-handed legislative acts could give third-party filters better access for parents, for schools. But as we know, hope makes a great breakfast, but a very, very poor supper. So let's see how we get on. I don't think really there's a fantastic answer for you at the moment, Jim, and that's because technology sucks and the people who make it also suck. Hopefully we can encourage them to suck slightly less over the next 18 months or so. So you can be rest assured that we're doing everything we can to investigate that space. And at Coria, having, as we do, the Custodio software, which is very much for putting on unmanaged devices. We're always interested in new developments in that area, and whatever we can do to make that more straightforward. But there isn't a straightforward answer at the moment, and I'm sorry your life is made more difficult by that.
Yes. From David Lees, I assume using something like Smoothwall Cloud Filter or another browser-based product means that the traffic is logged before encrypting. So is there no need to decrypt HTTPS traffic in that scenario?
David, you assume exactly correctly. And just to tie that back to talking about testfilter.com, you would get the decryption checkbox in both scenarios there if you were doing it like by really decrypting. There he goes, the air quotes again, idiot. If you're doing it by really decrypting, or if you were doing it by, as you say, getting the data prior, because you'd still be able to see the difference between, bbc.co.uk/news and bbc.co.uk/sport, which you couldn't if you were just looking at traffic on the wire with no decryption. You'd just see bbc.co.uk. In both of those examples, you'd be unable to differentiate. So that's the real test. They call it decryption because it's simple to call it decryption. but you are absolutely correct in your assumption that the two things achieve the same goal.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions, Sean? And I'm going to take it that's a no. So we're through. Thanks a lot.
Hang on, 3 o'clock. Wonderful.
Tom. Yeah, it's been really good. So thank you very much to Tom and Smoothwall today.